All right, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Dose Chais. My name's Efren, and with me always is Coop.
What it do?
So as we're winding down here, Coop made a great suggestion for the topic today. He was talking about summertime and just kind of sort of being the end of the summer here. I just got back from a 2-week trip to Seattle. I know Coop was in Chicago earlier this summer and just was talking about summertime and how you're enjoying how it used to be different with us when we were younger and how it is nowadays. Reminds me of a great line, 2 lines from Summertime by Will Smith, sitting with your friends as y'all reminisce about the days growing up and the first person you kissed. I know for us, Coop, when we were younger, we were just talking about the moment your feet hit the ground, you're outside playing, you didn't come home till the streetlights came on and stuff, and how that was how we connected, and how it's different nowadays for kids.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I think that's one reason why I went the education route, because I've always been a massive fan of summer.
Oh yeah, man.
And just the adventure, being a kid. Like I claim Chicago, but like most people in Illinois knows, most people who claim Chicago are from right outside of Chicago. So I grew up when I was little in the city, but then we definitely were moved outside of the city. But man, them Chicago suburbs, the summertime, man, just no better feeling of the adventure of, when you're young, your parents had that parameter, like don't leave the backyard or don't go too far away from here. But as you got a little older and you're allowed to adventure, I remember the times when we get on the bikes and just ride.
Oh yeah.
And then you stop at a gas station and somebody be like, bro, we're in Naperville, Illinois. Like, we just went 25 miles away.
Yeah.
And man, it was just like that sense of adventure and safety. Like you were with your little crew.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You had a couple, you didn't need a lot of money back then, because now I sound like my dad, but $1 back in the day would get you a candy bar and the Gatorade, so you were good.
Easily, yeah. Yeah, you didn't need much. That's all you needed. And even then, stuff was relatively inexpensive. So you could bum, if you and your friends had $5 between you, you could get you felt like you were kings for the day with $5 and whatnot that way. So, but yeah. The same thing with me when I remember being little. I had 2 siblings, so I was the middle kid, so I was the fire starter. I was always one who'd get my older brother going with my younger brother when he got older to play with us, and we'd be out riding bikes all day, getting into everything crazy we could do and find and stuff. But nothing to the level of dangerous. We didn't do anything that was scary. We'd swing on some vines, into a pond or something that way, or we'd go, like you said, riding around the neighborhood and stuff, just kind of sort of having a good time. Or, we always would we didn't live too far from the little elementary school, so we'd ride up in the morning and we'd play at the local elementary school, either the baseball fields or basketball all day. And we'd do that. Like the movie Sandlot. I hate to be that cliche, but that's what we do. So we'd meet up and we'd have great, never-ending games, it seemed like, of sporting events we'd go on and stuff with that way. And I don't know, has the world changed so much that it's not as safe, or is it just that are we more aware of the world now than what it was when we were younger?
I actually think it's entertainment. So when I see my 4 children during the summertime, my son is outside all day. But then my 3 daughters are inside doing different things. So my oldest is an artist. So she's just always creating. But then my 2 youngest, they are more entertained. So my daughter, my middle daughter, will literally watch and stream shows all day. And then I just think about when I was a teenager, we had MTV and stuff. And that was good for a couple hours. But you really didn't have the ability to stream a season of a show.
Oh yeah, we definitely didn't do that. You had to watch it on tape.
Yeah, or you didn't have the ability to, I'm just getting used to this one. They are now watching shows with their friends, like in a party on Amazon.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing now.
So they're all watching the same show, and they have the ability to live chat each other. So it's like they're having a play date, but it's just inside the house. When I remember, one of my favorite things growing up was, I was not an outlier. I'm not one of those Malcolm Gladwell dudes. But in my neighborhood, I remember we would ride bikes past the kid in the backyard shooting 10,000 3-pointers. And I remember there was a kid in our neighborhood named Lesroy. Not going to say his last name. I mean, but Lesroy was a fantastic athlete, and he was super great at running the 200 in football. And I remember watching Lesroy just run up and down fields. Like just watching him glisten in the sun, running up and down the fields. And I remember every July, we would go for tour days. And that was first week, everybody would be dying, mostly because of Lesroy. Because Lesroy would always be in such great shape that the coaches would be like Lesroy. And I'm like, today I'd be like, man, we're not all Malcolm Gladwell. We're not all outside at 6 a.m. running sprints and doing tires. Like he was the kid, like he was the running back. He was not a quarterback, so he wasn't throwing like crazy. But he was the kid where he didn't have a jugs machine. I remember sometimes his dad would be out there throwing him routes, but from like 6 a.m. to like 4 p.m., you just see him out there going to work. And I'm like, man, that's crazy.
Well, yeah, because I mean, same thing with that. I remember there was a little kid in our neighborhood. He was a baseball fanatic, and he'd be out there when we'd be out there playing games. He would be almost like Benny the Jet Rodriguez, and Sam Lack. He'd play every position. Hey, now we got 9 guys. You can now rotate everywhere. He would never settle on one position. He would play everywhere, and he ended up being really good in baseball when we were in high school. And I think he tried even in college, and I don't think he ever made it to the minors or played baseball professionally. But you could see that kid. He had that drive, the kind of sort of that he wanted to be. I don't want to say better than anybody else, but that drive to make himself better than what he was yesterday and stuff. So that was always cool, seeing those things that way. But yeah, I don't remember anything crazy. Maybe we were just naive when we were little and you just didn't realize the way that the world is. But like nowadays, when my son goes riding or walking away from our house and stuff, it's like I track him via his phone or some app and stuff with that way. So I just wonder if we just are no longer naive and we're too much of an adult now that we just can't turn off that safety net or that protective, bone that we have, in our bodies as fathers and as parents and stuff. Because, like I remember, our mom, if they had to call us to see where we were at, they would call other friends' house. Hey, are the boys at your house? No, they're not here. Okay. And she would call then the next, friend that we'd hang out with, his parents. That's how they found us and stuff that way. And even then it was like, well, they know where the house is. They know when it's dinner time, they'll come home. And there was never this fear of, hey, are they going to leave the house? Is something going to happen to them? What that way. And I don't think the world has changed much. I just think we live in a world that everything is reported. Everything is told to us. I don't think you can live with the...
It's more known.
Yes.
So, I think maybe that's it. Because if you look back into there's some crazy shows on Netflix, but one is Mindhunter.
Oh, yeah.
And you get into all the serial killers in the 70s and the 80s and even the early 90s. But as you're watching and witnessing, he's like, oh, man, that was happening 3 towns over from me.
Oh, yeah.
And you just didn't know about it because as good as the Chicago Tribune and other local papers were, you really didn't pay attention to it. And if it was a major story, maybe it'd be on the news and your parents would be like, hey, be extra careful today. But it was never like, in fact, I think the only time my mom would ever say anything to me like that is like heat. She'd be like, man, it's supposed to be 105 today. Take an extra bottle of water.
Yeah,
I was a backpack boy. So I always had a backpack on me. So I'd be on my little Diamondback with a backpack and people were like, what's in your backpack? I'd have like 2 bottles of water or something. Because my mom was always like, don't get dehydrated or anything. But that was it. It was never like, we didn't have cell phones. So if anything ever happened, you'd have to jump on a payphone, call your mom's office or wherever she was working and be like, hey, my tire popped. Can you come get me? But most of the time, it was just like, cliche, but it was like the movies depict it. Like most of the time, people were just out and about. And even in rough areas, you knew the neighborhoods to avoid. So you knew like, hey, as much as I want to go hang out over here, maybe there's cutie down the street, I am not venturing into that neighborhood because I want to keep my bike. So you would have to go around it. And we had friends. I had a friend named Andy, one of my boys. He had a pool in the backyard. I remember his dad was a Kane County sheriff, and his mom was our middle school dean.
Wow.
So you talk about the perfect family to hang out with. And I remember that's a story where I learned about dehydration. We used to go to swim at Andy's like every day in the summertime. And there'd be times where my mom was like, you basically live with Andy because we just stay nights. But I remember one time a girl got sun poisoning and dehydrated. She was in the pool all day. And people think when you're in water, you don't think to drink water.
That's the worst.
She got dehydrated. It was crazy.
Well, there's a lot of those things. Speaking of that, I always would think of that one that you get more sunburn on an overcast day than you do on a sunny day because you don't realize how much is worse that it is that way. It's funny, you being a backpack kid, with me being a Boy Scout when I was younger back in the day, I'd be that kid that would always do stuff, would always go and do things together. And so I was always a proverbial prepared kid all the time and stuff. So to me, I was always ready for something to happen or something to go on and stuff with that way. So, that is pretty funny in one way. Do you remember, were there any toys or games and things that you were excited when you were thinking about, man, one day when I have kids, I can't wait to keep these things for them or show them games or things that you had to be nostalgic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive board game fan.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was never like a Nintendo kid because it required you to be inside. But I remember playing the game Pit outside. It's like the stock market game.
Oh, yeah.
I remember us playing Pit at picnic tables. And of course, we play Uno still in my household, but Uno and Phase 10. And again, because I was a backpack kid, card games, you could just throw them in your backpack.
Oh, yeah. You could
I
bring them
remember
apart.
when I was in maybe 15 or 16, so about a sophomore or junior in high school, somebody introduced me to Yahtzee. So then I became a
nice.
Yahtzee can guy. People would always be like, what's rocking in your bag? And I would always have a can with 5 die to play Yahtzee. So people were always like, man, what are you doing? And once people got on to it, I remember I'd have a whole notebook, a paper with my guys' names in it, like Moosey, Will, Andy. People are like, what are y'all tracking? I'm like, oh man, we're playing Yahtzee. So now it's crazy because now I play with my daughters, especially at home, because they really enjoy it.
I do like Yahtzee. So you speaking of Uno there, it gave me bad chills. My wife's family, they played it all the time growing up. And I'm not a fan of it. I used to always love it, but they're just like undercut. They're just real mean when they play that game of Uno. I'm not a fan of it. I'll tell you the story. We were playing once, and it's one of those things, basic rule of Uno, when you have one card left, you say Uno. Well, as you're letting go of the card, you can't say Uno if you have 2 cards in your hand because that's breaking the rules, so you have to pick up 2 cards. Okay, whatever. But the moment you let go of the hand, I mean like the millisecond that you let go of the hand, somebody would yell Uno on you because you didn't say it, so you had to pick up 4 cards or whatever it is the rule was. Well, to me, I would say Uno as I'm letting go of it. No, you can't. You're still holding 2 cards. Okay, so then as I would let go of it, I would say Uno, but I'd get beaten to it to the point that I didn't even get to say Uno as I was letting go of the card. They kept calling on me that way, and I legit threw all the cards down on the floor, and I was like, I'm never playing this game again. I never did to this day. And even now my son who's 14, he loves Uno. We have Phase 10, all those games. I won't play those card games with him because
My family, because there's 6 of us. So I'm always telling people and now that my youngest is 10, everybody can play games. So we even play Monopoly, but the kids a couple years ago was like, Dad, you're so good at regular Monopoly, we got to switch it up. So we have Arendelle, so Frozen Monopoly, and I still dominate it. So I'm always like
Frozen Monopoly.
Yeah, Disney has all kinds of different versions of it. My game growing up was Risk. So there's no better game or Access and Allies in the summertime where you can have 5 or 6 hours to sit down and order some pizzas, maybe watch a war movie in the background and just dominate the world. So, I mean, I grew up with a geeky group of friends, man. We go outside and play football, ride the bikes, but if we were going to be inside, it'd be a board game, definitely.
Now, I do like Risk. I love that game when growing up. That's one of those games that I was trying to explain to my son how to play it, but he didn't understand the grasp of it because I was doing a poor job explaining to what it is. Because it's just like a takeover game. It's like Monopoly, we pick up pieces, but not quite that. It's not as intense isn't the right word, but I guess with Monopoly, there's a rhyme or reason to why you pick up the spaces, because you pick up blue spaces, so green spaces, so as people come by, you get more money. But with Risk, you just are literally just taking over pieces as you see them, not really in some kind of organized playing, you just would take him as you
Oh,
were
yeah.
right there on it that way. And he's like, "What? I don't understand." So that's one of those games that I tried to teach him once, and he just didn't get it. Which is funny because he loves Dungeons and Dragons, which is very similar to Risk, but not quite as with Dungeons and Dragons, they have one person who does the campaign, but with Risk, you do your own strategy to kind of sort of take over the world and stuff with that way.
It's always funny because you get to see who your diplomats are. So in Risk, it's hard to conquer the world without some type of allegiance.
Oh yeah, you need help.
So
you
yeah,
can't-
you're always trying to like sugar talk and hey man, I got an extra soda. You're thirsty, and it's always good because you get to see the personality of the people who pick that up early and try to make those alliances. But sometimes people will come in with handshake deals before they start, and then they end up in the same part of the world, and you're just looking at them like one of these guys they're going to turn on each other. So I got to figure out which one to align with, so when they do turn, it'll benefit me. So I like to play with students when we're talking like World War I and World War II because I think a lot of times they have a hard time grasping the whole world. So, I mean, you can find a modern Risk board, but it's super hard to find them. So then you're like, man, this country no longer exists, or this is no longer called this. But once they get into it, they seem to have a pretty good time. My oldest daughter, she's cutthroat at it. She has an anti-dad alliance. We have a Game of Thrones version of it, way too complex. Some of those expansion boards got crazy.
Oh, I'm sure with all the names and spaces and stuff. So having those games that would sit for a while, were there kids' homes that you would be designated board game houses? Like Risk, you would leave the game always going. You wouldn't tear it down because, I remember playing Risk, and we'd have like week-long campaigns. We would leave at somebody's house, and we'd come back and we'd pick up where we left off the next day.
In college, I had a friend, terrible, terrible game called Diplomacy.
Never heard of that.
Diplomacy is hands down one of the worst board games you can ever play. It takes hours to set the game up.
Diplomacy.
Yeah, I promise you can find it on Amazon. It's only it's probably between $20 and $40, but the game itself will take you. We used to play it for weekends in college, and it's one of those games. I'm not a big fan of Settlers of Catan because I'm more like a conquer and destroy guy. So Catan, you got too much deal making, but Diplomacy, that's the game where we would like freeze it and people would go and play 6 hours of Halo and come back. So
Oh yeah. Because that was the beauty of it. One of the things is that, like anything in life, at least with me, when I get frustrated or something, I get stuck on a problem, I get up and I'll walk away to just kind of clear my mind, do something else differently, and then come back to it. And you're playing the same game and the same strategy or whatever it is you're trying to pick up there, but you're coming at it with a different perspective because you're not looking at it like you were stressing about it, that 5 or 6 hour gameplay that you were doing it that way. It's good to walk away and stuff with that way. Diplomacy, I gotta look that one up.
I never played games for fun. So even right now, like I have a major fantasy football league, and I'm getting text messages daily, and my wife is always saying like, "Would you say this is a fun hobby?" I said, "No, this is a part-time job." Like,
Are you the commissioner of the league?
man, I try not to be the commissioner. I keep trying to give it to somebody else. So this is our 4th year of this league, and it's a Dynasty Keeper League. So it's intense, and you really draft for the future and the present. And right now is like that time of year where people are like, does anybody pay attention to the preseason? I'm like, no. But in reality, fantasy heads are watching every single preseason game.
Yeah, making sure you pick up on that dark horse or somebody else that's an unknown player.
Yeah, because it's like, what's his name? His last name is Williams. He played for the Rams last year. He was a rookie. He came out of nowhere. But in the preseason, that guy showed flashes. And we have a 4-player keeper league. So our first round in our draft is really the 5th round. And somebody took him in like the 2nd round. So it's like the 6th round. People are like, why are you taking this kid? Now, he's ranked the 4th or 5th running back in fantasy.
Was it Karen Williams?
Yeah. Like he's a young guy. Same thing with like Puka last year.
Oh yeah, he was.
Nobody saw that coming, but if you watch the preseason games, you saw him run routes and you're like, this guy looks good.
Yeah, but you always hear about those teams that go, wow, this team's been 4-0 in the preseason. Maybe they're going to go on. Last time they were 4-0, they did this, and this in the playoffs, and then they end up faltering stuff with that way. You get somebody well, this team is 0-5 or 0-3 in the preseason. Now that means last time they were first in their conference and stuff with that way. So a lot of people don't really put a lot of thought or credence to the preseason games.
Don't pay attention to the team. Pay attention to the
player.
players. So like when the Bears went out last week, and there's a kid named Johnson. He didn't start the game, but he played all of the second and most of the third before they shut it down. But that guy was being targeted by the first string quarterback and the second string quarterback. So to me, I was like, hey man, he gotta be something, the fact that they're targeting him so much. So maybe that's the guy that coaches have on that list and saying, all right, let's see, he's a great practice player, but let's see him in action. So to me, it's like looking at those things. And then, I mean, you also want to see what they do with vets like Christian McCaffrey, over 300 touches last year. Like, is that a guy? I mean, in Carolina, he had a hard time staying healthy.
Yeah, but in Carolina, he was the guy. He was the offense, and everyone else was second option down, when he was at Carolina. But also, too, Carolina's a bad situation with they only pick one guy to be the mainstay, and that's it. They don't really have, second wide receivers or third wide receivers or whatnot. They don't really have tier guys and stuff that way. But in San Francisco, it's Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle or Debo Samuels or somebody else and stuff that way. And so, he didn't have to be the guy because he's got a handful of guys that'll help him out. He's not just the only one trying to run offense and stuff.
I mean, last year, 339 touches. I don't care what you say. That 339 touches is crazy.
He looked good, and I think he wasn't injured too much. I know he got banged up a couple times with his leg, thigh, hamstring or something, some lower leg injury. I think.
Yeah,
he had,
banged up a little bit, but 339 at 28.
I mean, what is that? You divide it by 17. What's that? 6, 2. What is it? 20 some odd carries, 20 some odd touches a game.
Yeah, I mean, and they do it creative with him. I mean, he's good at catching out of the backfield. So
yeah, did you see where they ranked him 99 this coming year in Madden again?
Yeah. That's interesting because I don't think he's at the top of his game anymore. At some point, you start to come down. I look at a kid like Breece Hall. I see you with that Detroit versus everybody T-shirt on. I know that's the trend, but I saw them lining Gibbs up in the slot. I'm like, man, there's some creative teams out there with some of these more agile running backs. If I was a running back in the NFL, I would try to get in that slot because those receivers are getting paid way more money than those running backs at the moment.
That was always the thing, though, about Christian McCaffrey is that he was a good route running guy. He didn't have to be just a running back from the backfield. He could be lining up in those little slot spots and stuff that way. And you can use them sometimes as a decoy to kind of sort of, because they were giving him the ball so much and whatnot that way, he could be good. But
Debo Samuel has made sure, no matter how many times they line him up in that backfield, he keeps his title receiver for the money. So Debo makes more than Christian McCaffrey, even though Christian McCaffrey is probably more efficient and more effective at his role.
yeah,
That wide receiver money train.
yeah, but I mean, you stop and think you get some of that wide receiver money. It's good to have, but that doesn't necessarily make you I don't want to say the best player, the most important player, the most even influential player on the team.
339 touches means you're getting tackled 325 times. As a receiver, if you have 105 receptions, you're probably in the top 10 receivers in the league. I think I'd much rather be that receiver with those 105 times tackled versus.
Oh yeah, I mean, you definitely the wear and tear on your body is not going to be as much as a wide receiver. But yeah, if you're a slot guy coming across the middle,
Not in this NFL anymore. They protect those guys so much coming across the middle now. You gotta see them. They can't be defenseless. You got to call their name out and wave at them and say, hey, man, I'm about to tackle you before you hit them. Otherwise, it's a 15-yard penalty, possibly a suspension. It's probably way safer going across the middle today, probably 5 years ago.
yeah.
I mean, think about it. Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, is the best receiver in football. He signed a contract, I think it's $35 million guaranteed a year. Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in football, and it's $18 million a year. If he'd have switched to receiver, even being a top 20 receiver, he probably makes 25 a year.
Well, but I think the reason why that is that big of a discrepancy is the NFL is not driven as much running back wise as it used to be. Because think about it, back in the day, every team that was dominant back in the mid 90s, early 2000s, you could always think of the quarterback, the wide receiver, and the running back on any team.
Yeah.
That's what we always thought of. I mean, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Troy Aikman with the Cowboys back in the day. And even when, the Chargers were decent, they had Phillip Rivers, Keenan Allen, LaDainian Tomlinson. They had guys that were always three big.
Kenny did not play with LaDainian. He's old, but he's not that
Well, who
old.
was there was Antonio Gates.
Yeah, I'm like, wait,
so I
Kenny
mean, so,
is old.
so they were always three-headed guys that way. But I think the running backs now have been devalued. They're just not as much
Well,
as
Christian
part of.
McCaffrey, third in MVP voting this year. So, I mean, Christian McCaffrey's an outlier because he makes $8 million more
Yeah.
than the next running back. So he's way above the average. But even you can argue that if you take quarterbacks out of the conversation, Christian McCaffrey might be the best weapon in all of football. And because he catches so much, you would think, think about the guy who's a contemporary of him, Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler, 2 or 3 years ago was up for an extension. Like he was going to get 12 or 13 million. I think he got signed by the Commanders for like 8 this year.
Yeah, but Austin Eckler to me is more of a running back in the true sense than an all-around player like Christian McCaffrey can be.
No, I bet you'd be shocked at Eckler's receiving numbers. I think
Like all-purpose yards, you think they'd be similar?
I think he had a down year last year, but 2 years ago, I'm pretty sure he might have been top 10 in receptions, period. I think he had like 104 receptions 2 years ago. Watch, you about to be spooked out how good I am at this game.
I just was trying to figure out who those guys, how they compared up last year and stuff with that way. Let's see here, the stats. Let's see how they compared that way. Because to me, I don't think Austin Eckler. To me, Austin Eckler is more of a running back in the truest sense
No way.
than he was that way.
He's more of a receiver.
Yeah, compared to rushing yards, Christian McCaffrey had almost 3-1, 1,200 yards opposed to 441 for Austin Eckler last year. Receiving yards are pretty close, 526 for McCaffrey, 445 for
Look,
Eckler
2 years
and
ago,
stuff.
2022, when Eckler was healthy the entire year, his receiving numbers are about to surprise you.
And this is what just based on.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
2020.
this is projected for 24. Sorry, go ahead.
So in 2022, he had a healthy Herbert for most of the year. So in 2023, they lost Herbert halfway through. So I think that hurts his production.
Yeah, and receiving yards, he was Christian had 741, and Eckler had 722 for that year in receiving yards.
How many receptions for Eckler?
He had 107 receptions to 85 for.
I said 104. So yeah, Eckler, if you're in a PPR league, points per reception, Eckler was outstanding.
And then let's see, based on rushing yards, Christian McCaffrey had 1139 in 23. I don't even see Eckler in the first handful of.
No, last year was a bad year for the Chargers.
915 he had.
Oh, 915 is not nearly as bad as I thought.
Yeah, so that was a couple hundred yards.
Yeah, the projections for him this year is because of
Almost
Jaden
200 yard
Daniels.
difference.
Jaden Daniels about to eat up some of those rushing yards.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely going to be better that way.
I hate to say this to the Saquon fans, but Saquon too, going to the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, they're going to run that read option. Jalen Hurts going to be running again. And then inside the 5, I think Jalen Hurts, because of that tush push, Jalen Hurts took away touches from DeAndre Swift that were pretty intense.
Yeah, that will be curious to know how the NFL season will all shake out with these new rules that were put in place for the kickoffs, and the balls had to land between the 20-yard line and the end zone. And if you landed it short of the 20-yard line and the ball got spotted at the 40, like being kicked out of bounds and stuff. And there were a couple other things that they tried to do, and I didn't really get to read into all of them that way, but there were a couple of them that just stood out to me. And I was curious to know how it all worked out. I think they only ended up having one touchback in the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, and the touchback is what you don't want to do because you give them the ball at the 30, and that's a significant advantage. I think it's another innovation to make the game more interesting and more safe. So to me, I'm like, people are like, oh, there wasn't anything innovative about it. I'm like, it's a preseason game. Wait till week 1 and week 2. We're going to see teams try some very different things. And I also think it's going to be interesting to see who kicks the ball because I do think there's a element of a specialist who can. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if teams try different styles of kickoffs. Because if you're a guy who can drop that ball right at the 10, that's going to be interesting because you don't want to get near that end zone. So, I mean, if you're a kid in middle school or high school, practicing different types of kickoff might be kind of cool. And then another rule I don't like is the onside rule. Can't use it until the fourth quarter. You have to be down and you have to let the other team know. So there's no more element of surprise.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't even know what the success rate of onside kicks is. I mean, it's like 15 to 20%. It's not that high. So, I mean, even if you tell them it's coming.
I don't like Sean Payton as a coach, but I always think about that Super Bowl against the Colts when they came out at halftime and kicked the onside kick and changed that game. And it's like you can kick it 100 times and it might not work. But the one time it works, it's always kind of sort of spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It definitely, you felt bad. Like I'll never forget when they were interviewing, Devin Hester. I can't remember, I drew a blank on his name.
How can you forget Devin Hester? Come on, man.
Especially with it being Texans Bears.
Chicago Bear legend.
In the Hall of Fame game. But just, you stop and think of when he got the ball in that Super Bowl, I believe. No, it was.
Well, he returned one in the Super Bowl.
It was the Bears.
The game.
Yeah, the Bears Colts game.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he did that way, when he returned that game, the opening punt and stuff that way. Again, that's just one of those things of I understand safety and stuff, but I mean that's a dynamic play. I mean I don't know how you're going to get. He might be the last greatest punt return we've ever had.
He says that the NFL created the Devin Hester rule because of Devin Hester and how great he was at it. And I'm a football fan before anything else, but he played for the greatest organization in the history of the greatest sport in the history of the world.
Excuse me when I pick up my shoes. I don't want to get dirty here.
How many teams have you ever known to go to a Super Bowl without a quarterback? Rex Grossman was gross. Devin Hester, you got to remember, Devin Hester and that defense scored more points than the offense did that year.
But again, you stop and think, it goes back to that adage of offense wins games, defense wins championships. They didn't win that year, so that's the one outlier with that little cliche and stuff with that way. But you can get guys who can win, or you can get teams who can win when they have a managing, quarterback.
Man, I'm going to tell you right now, that Bears team should have won that Super Bowl. And the reason we lost was not Lovey. It was the organization. We had drafted a guy, running back named Cedric Benson. Oof. And we had another running back, man, I always forget his name, but he was incredible, had great arms. But in that game, we're up 14-7. Peyton Manning throws a pick. We're driving. Cedric Benson blows out his knee, drops the ball, and it's just a momentum swing. And that killed the momentum of that Super Bowl. But man, that Bears team. I mean, that's the Denny Green rant. You want to crown him? Crown him when the defense and Devin Hester. Yeah. Denny Green made the mistake of continuing to punt to Hester, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Well, but I mean, you've had moments of where they always punt to a guy, they tell you not to and stuff. I mean, famously that game many years ago when I think Michael Vick was on the Eagles team, and they were down like
Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, they were down like 3 scores. I think it was like 7 or 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. It was something crazy, and they, the game was tied with like 6 or 7 seconds left, and you could see.
No, it's a 3-point game. Giants had a 3-point lead, and they said the only thing you cannot do is kick it to Jackson.
I thought the game was tied when they kicked to him.
No, they're up 3. So Giants are going to win the game. That's why they're punting it away. So all they got to do, just don't punt it to him. And then they punt it to him. And then, incredible return. Almost as incredible as Devin Hester against the Cardinals. But I'm going to take Devin Hester against the Cardinals. No offense, man. But once they played that, what's that song, that Superman song? What's that dude's name? They had the whole little dance with it. Oh, man, I can't even think of his name. Oh, man, there's like a whole little dance routine to it. Devin Hester would come out to it. The whole crowd would just go crazy.
Yeah, what is the name of that song?
I always want to call him Draco, but that's not his name. What
Let's see
is the
how I look
kid's
it up.
name? Watch Me Whoop? No, that's not the song.
No, that's the Whip Nene song.
No, this one is Superman. Super Soak. Oh, man. The lyrics are terrible.
Soldier Boy.
Soldier Boy, that's right. When he came out to that Soldier Boy.
Okay.
Unstoppable. Wait, is it too early for us to do Super Bowl picks?
I mean, there's no such thing as too early. We don't really have a rhyme scheme or outline to how we do this podcast. So, I mean, if you want to.
Man, I'm going to go ahead and give you the Super Bowl today.
Hold on, let me write it down.
I'm going to give you the score and everything.
Okay.
Baltimore Ravens representing the AFC. They finally get over the hump and they beat the Chiefs. And,
Well, we'll find out the first game. They're playing the first game this season.
and the NFC representative, Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears.
Oh.
Super Bowl champions in a great game, 35-31. Bear down.
Oof.
Who you got?
That's awful optimistic.
I mean, 7-10. We went out and got one of the best receivers in the game. Kept everybody on defense. Drafted great. I'm telling you, got a favorable schedule. We have nothing to lose. We're playing with house money. As long as the Panthers are terrible, we're going to get a high second round pick. 35-31. That's my heart pick.
I mean, I don't think the Panthers will be bad this year. Somebody asked me yesterday how many wins I thought they were going to get. I optimistically said 4, but I think I was just too much of a knee-jerk reaction. They might get 7 this year, but still, even that puts them at 7 and 9. Dude, last year the NFC was awful.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The NFC is better this year.
No, like the NFC South, like where the Panthers are. I forget what the record
Hey,
was.
I like Gabe Canales. I think that's a great hire. But it's amazing to me. Byron Leftwich took the Tampa Bay with Tom Brady to the Super Bowl. Canales comes in the next year. Baker's okay. He's not outstanding. Panthers hire him as the head coach off of that. Doesn't he need a little bit more work than that?
I mean, some of the crazy coaches, they have, guys that come out of nowhere. I mean, that were, but not every good coordinator is destined to be a good head coach. I mean, look at Romeo Crennel. He was great for all those years when he was at,
New England.
the Patriots, and he kind of sort of floundered. Same thing with Bill O'Brien. He was fairly decent with those guys. Josh McDaniels, fantastic when he was the OC there at the Patriots, and he couldn't do anything at Jackson.
Who was the best player on the Panther team last year? Easy.
I mean, maybe in a defensive guy, I always liked the way Dante Jackson played, but he got injured late in the season and stuff.
He's a Giant now?
Oh, yeah. Brian Burns.
I mean, you're saying your team's going to be better, even though your defense took a significant...
But you could tell he was playing to get out of there. So that's why he was putting all of his good work on tape. I mean, last year they were 2-15.
I mean, but he was still very good on a bad defense. And your secondary, I mean, you guys got rid of...
They had a lot of guys who got hurt and stuff, and a lot of guys who they got rid of because they were trying to make up room for salary reasons or cap reasons or whatnot.
And don't forget, Kirk Cousins is now with the Falcons. Come on, man. That division. And that Atlanta team, all them young guys, and now they got Uncle Kirk in the room.
Yeah, but then now, how long will it be if he starts playing badly? They start then calling for Michael Penix to come take over and play.
Man, as a Bears fan who's been forced to watch the Minnesota Vikings for the last couple years, Kirk Cousins doesn't play bad.
No,
the
man,
man
he's always
is
good.
efficient.
Yeah, he's always good. Yeah.
He's going to move the ball around. Yes, he's going to pat the ball a little bit too much, but like you said, your division is trash.
Yeah, last year the two records, the teams tied at the top were 9-8, Bucks Saints, 7-10 third place the Falcons, and 2-15 the Panthers. Which is how you got your number one pick.
I'm gonna pick those same finishes, different records. I think I think I take the Falcons. You know what? Next week we should do this. We should pick division winners. We should pick MVP, Rookie of the Year. Get a fan something else to talk about.
That works for me.
I love how depressed you got as a Panthers fan. Think about that 2-15.
I look, man. I laugh. You know, I don't have bunches of money, but the one thing I splurge on my vice every year is I get Sunday NFL ticket. I have for the last 14 years now. And I joked, I was like, isn't that a lot of money to spend? It is. But when the Panther teams have been bad, I can watch somebody else. I don't care if it's, teams I don't care about, teams that have no allegiances to. You're laughing. I got that Detroit versus everybody. I got into them when they were on Hard Knocks a couple years ago. So I love those guys. And Dan Campbell, the way he coaches that team is fantastic. I know you've been a Bears guy.
I don't
the
mind
same
Dan
division
Campbell.
and stuff and
Because I just don't think Dan Campbell, as good as they were last year, I don't think that coach would get you over the top. Because sometimes when it's 4th and 3 from the 35, you might want to take the field goal. But Dan Campbell is always going to go for it. And to me,
but he's always going to be a team guy though, because that's why they
great team guy. But as somebody in his division, every single time I'm like, yeah, Dan, go for it, bro.
Yeah, but think about though, like Ron Rivera, who was who was a decent, defensive guy for you guys. He'd always go for it when he was a Panther coach, and he got us to the Super Bowl. Now, granted, your point, it made great with him. He didn't win. He got us there, but we didn't win.
I'm going to take Dan Campbell because I was rewatching that 49er game, and I'm like, what is Dan Campbell doing there? Field goal range in the fourth quarter. He was up like 7 points. I'm like, man, why not give yourself a 10-point lead? Nope, Campbell went for it. 49ers turned that game around, and I'm just like, yeah, that's Campbell. But, hey, you know what? Every once in a while, I wake up in the morning time, and I just think Tariq Stevens, Tevin Jenkins, Keenan Allen, Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, and a second-round pick next year for Bryce Young. And I just say, thank you, Dave Tepper. Thank you, Carolina Panthers.
That's just the ignorance of Dave Tepper being an owner,
Oh,
thinking he knows too much.
my goodness gracious. I am a Chicago Bear fan.
In that instance, you just can't be the smartest guy in the room when you're doing the NFL draft. You got to give it to those old heads, football heads who know what they need to pick. When an owner comes in there and says, well, we need to do it this way, you're voting and playing on your heart. You can't be an owner of a team and have your heart into it that way. You can have your heart into it that way, but hire somebody who's going to talk you out of that and what way. That's why, to me, Jerry Jones, being the owner and the GM, is never going to do well for them.
Yeah, I mean, poor. I feel bad for those Cowboy fans. I mean, they consistently win. So if your game is to win games and not championships, they might be happy. Somebody said it the other day. Dak Prescott has the second most wins in the last 5 years, only to Pat Mahomes. So he's been consistently good, but him and Josh Allen in the same boat. Neither one of them. I mean, I feel probably worse for Josh Allen. I mean, Stephon Diggs is gone. They went out and got him a rookie receiver. And then they also got rid of Corey Davis. What was the receiver's name? Not Corey Davis. But their second receiver also left. And I'm like, man, if I'm a defense, I'm teeing off on Josh Allen just because I don't think the weapons are there anymore. Wait, you got to give us your Super Bowl pick before we log off.
All right. So, ironically, you're talking about the Bears, the Bills. I think it'll be Bills in the AFC, and 49ers again in the NFC with 49ers victorious 28-24.
Wait, so you got the 49ers keeping Ayuk? Or you think they're going to
they got to get rid of him. You don't want that guy making that team, I don't want to say bad, but you don't want that team bringing him down.
But do you know the last 4 years they've had a different player hold out for the exact same reason?
Oh, yeah.
Last year was Boza until 2 days before. Mm-hmm. Year before that, it was Debo until the week before. Like the 49ers, because of their unique situation with how they play the quarterback contract, they're in this conversation every year. But I love that show receiver. Mm-hmm. And in that show receiver, when Debo got hurt, they lost 3 games in a row. And I think that with the specialists that they have, Debo at that X, Kittle at tight end, CMC in the backfield, and Ayuk as your route runner. If you lose Ayuk, you have to find somebody to replace him who's very, very good. And I hear the Browns rumors, where the rumor is the Browns are going to give him picks and Amari Cooper. If they get Amari Cooper, I think they could stay at that same level. Even though Amari Cooper is not the same deep threat as Ayuk, he is a great route runner. But
I saw the Patriots were running as well too. They were
And they're trying to
ponying
get
up
Kendrick
to
Bourne and better picks. If I'm the 49ers, I take the Patriots because I think the Patriots are going to be terrible again.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm a team trying to get Ayuk, if you put Ayuk across from George Pickens, I don't care who the quarterback is.
Yeah, but you stop and think though, you get somebody to pony up like the Patriots, like somebody who's rebuilding, and Ayuk's going to go to them. You think he's going to change his mind?
No, I think at this point Ayuk wants to check. I mean, when somebody offers you, so what is he making this year with the 49ers? 14?
Yeah, it's not.
And
It's
so
not
the
much.
Patriots sign him and give you 30, 32?
Yeah, but at some point the money ain't going to take you there. I mean,
don't-
to be as close as you were, I mean, to be a couple plays removed from winning that game last year against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, I'd rather have that one title and $50 million and worry about it next year.
I remember when I was a kid, I worked at summer camps. One of the most fun I ever had. And one summer I went and worked at a sports camp, and it was not a ton of fun. But the pay was outrageous. And I grew up watching DuckTales with Scrooge McDuck when the entry would come on and he had a pool full of coins.
Yep.
And he would dive into swimming in it. And I was like, oh man, when I get my check, I'm going to go to the bank and get change. And I got I got like $200 worth of nickels. And I went to Home Depot and bought one of those orange buckets. And I poured all the nickels into the bucket. And I tried to put my foot in there. And I had to finagle it, but it was fun. And now think if you're Brandon Ayuk. You can stay with the 49ers and possibly lose in another Super Bowl. Because you've done that before. Or you can go live in Massachusetts for $32 million a year.
Yeah.
You got to remember, this is the NFL. He can stay with the 49ers. They control him this year. And then they can franchise him the next 2 years.
Yeah, but I mean, again, you see guys who get all that money and they don't do much with it. I mean, look, Kirk Cousins is a perfect example. They guaranteed him all that money when he was in Minnesota, and he's one playoff game he's won since he's got that money.
Yeah, but you seen Kurt's house?
I've seen his house
You
when he
seen
was
the
on that
future
quarterback.
he secured? Come on.
Yeah, and I get that way. But would you rather be a guy who makes money or a guy who's got a championship?
I'll take the money.
I mean, I go
No
back
offense,
to.
man.
I mean, to me, I go back to that. To that GOAT conversation of Michael LeBron. Well, Michael's 6-0 in the MVP in the finals. LeBron 4-6.
But
You
how many-
can't tell me if you get Charles Barkley, John Stockton, Karl Malone, those guys who never won, and you ask them, would you rather have a losing record in the NBA Finals or your career? I bet you 6-1 they'd take a losing record in the NBA
But if you
Finals.
get the Michael Jordan money, don't say just money. Michael's a billionaire. And think about how many times have you seen guys
but
auction off?
you gotta remove the Michael Jordan money from his career as a basketball athlete. He made money. His career as a businessman, he's made his billions. That's where his money's come in.
But how many times have you seen guys win those Super Bowls and then auction off those rings? Because
Oh, yeah,
financially
because, yeah,
they're in
they just-
trouble.
yeah, they don't know
Look
how
at
to-
Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, they don't know how to
Gordon
do stuff.
Hayward got that money from the Celtics, tore up his ankle, never was the same guy. I know the Hornets paid him. The Charlotte Hornets paid him again. He never won a championship, but he's leaving the NBA with like $200 million. You know what I would do with $200 million? I'd take 100 of that and go make myself a best career ring. And I'll walk around with, hey, look at the diamond in the middle of that thing. You see what it said around the diamond? 200 million gross.
I mean, it goes back to the adage of, Bobby Bonilla. They're going to keep paying him $1.5 million for the next 9 years. That contract expires July 1st of 2035. I mean, because they deferred that money to him. And, I mean, he's made a lot of money over his career and went out of the way, too. But he's going to be known for that, not for his playing career.
Man, for that kind of money. I mean, I understand it, and I understand the pursuit. But if you're Brandon Ayuk, and you know you're the best receiver on that team, probably the best receiver in that division.
I don't know, man. After they had Debo go down in the last 3 games and he didn't do nothing.
No, Ayuk's numbers last year were insane.
Right. But to me, it's he was playing when Debo was hurt and they lost 3 without Debo. So you stop and think, if you're that good, would you have helped propel that team over the hump?
So then let me ask you the question. So the 49ers were offered the first-round pick for him during the draft. So the 49ers didn't take the first-round pick. Remember, a first-round pick guarantees you a couple different things. 5 years of control over a player. Why didn't the 49ers move him? Because the 49ers know, just like I know, Brandon Ayuk is a pretty good receiver.
Yeah, I mean, based on, next year, he's supposed to be this year $14.1 million is what his money is to be made this year.
And he's seeing DJ Moore get 27.5.
Yeah, but I mean,
You can CD Lamb. No, hey, Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is only owed $1 million this year because of the way his contract was structured.
well, yeah, but he's still in his rookie deal, though, right?
He hasn't practiced yet. He's shown up to practice, hasn't ran a route. You think they got to pay him?
Oh yeah, with Joe Burrow, yeah, they're going to have to keep those guys there.
All right, man.
All
Let's talk to
All
last.
right. Well, so that'll set you up then for next week's episode. But again, we just started, talking about this one with the end of the summer being closer to the school year and everything else going on that way. And we'll just hit you with these last two lines of this thing because as I was thinking about looking here, as we come to the end of our thing, we're going to go. As we leave you here, we're going to go back to the crib, change our clothes because we got invited to a barbecue that's starting at 4. With you always, this is Efren.
And Ellison.
See you till next time.
Peace.